Thanks, John. In our third article, Coffee, Caffeine, and Health Outcomes, an Umbrella Review, the authors were searching for an association between coffee consumption and various health outcomes such as cardiovascular disease, prostate cancer, and Alzheimer's disease. Similar to the previous articles, the researchers sought to find trial studies by searching PubMed and Embase for the terms coffee, caffeine, and meta-analysis. They included the following types of studies: meta-analysis of observational studies considering coffee consumption or caffeine intake as the exposure variable of interest, and any health outcome and meta-analyses of random control trials assessing the effects of coffee or caffeine administration from any source and for any clinical outcome. They excluded studies in which coffee consumption was part of the outcome, studies on genetic polymorphisms related to coffee consumption, studies that evaluated the prevalence of coffee consumption, and randomized control trials that combined coffee administration with other treatments. In order to evaluate the connection, they performed an umbrella review, that is, a review that aims to systematically examine existing research for the same intervention or phenomena of interest. Whenever more than one meta-analysis was found using the same outcome and the same study design and type of population, the articles were evaluated for the main outcome of interest. For further analyses, the most recent or most exhaustive study was considered. When more than one study design was evaluated, results were considered and reported in the following order of importance: meta-analyses of prospective studies, comprehensive prospective and case control studies, and case control studies. The pooled analyses of the highest versus the lowest category of exposure and dose-response analysis were evaluated. Direction, magnitude, and heterogeneity were considered when scoring the level of evidence. Based on this criteria, the evidence for decreased risk of Alzheimer's based on caffeine consumption was graded as highly possible. A sample size of 244 articles was selected based on the researchers' inclusion and exclusion parameters. Out of the 244 articles collected, 79 articles with 15,761 participants reported a reduced risk of Alzheimer's with a relative risk of 0.73 with a 95% confidence interval. The findings also indicated that caffeine consumption may provide some anti-inflammatory benefits and provide some inhibition to oxidative stress produced by free radicals. While the research article may provide some insight into whether an association exists between caffeine and cognition, the risks of excess caffeine consumption may outweigh the benefits. Going back to our PICO question, further research needs to be conducted to test whether oxidative stress and reduction of anti-inflammatory agents protects the elderly from cognitive disease. Consequently, if coffee consumption is to provide cognitive protection, do the benefits outweigh an increased risk for cardiovascular, colon, and prostate diseases? In our last article, Caffeine Intake and Dementia, a Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis, the researchers were evaluating claims from 4 2004 studies which found a negative association between Alzheimer's and caffeine consumption, despite important heterogeneity in the methods and results. Since several similar studies had been published since then with new insights, they felt the subject deserved another look. Thus, the researchers conducted a systemic review of research through 2010 by searching Medline, Scopus, and Web of Science. The studies were selected by 3 independent reviewers and contained 9 cohort and 2 case control studies. The researchers used random effects meta-analysis to obtain the most precise estimates of quantitative data synthesis. Ultimately, the 11 studies published between 1989 and 2009 met the final inclusion criteria for systematic review, with the main characteristics of the studies and results focusing on the relationship between caffeine intake and cognitive impairment. The researchers found a positive trend towards protective effects of caffeine with a relative risk of 0.84 with a 95% confidence interval. However, the limited number of epidemiological studies precludes definitive results. While this study may provide the best evidence for our PICO question, the articles selected and studied did not utilize an age group, specifically older adults. Further research may help alleviate the areas to which there is not enough epidemiological evidence.